Alright, so let me tell you what exactly happened. So the past 2 weeks or so, my mother-in-law, her car broke down. And it's like a 2000 Land Rover. It's kind of old, but still in pretty good looking shape. But the thing about it is that the engine has been having a lot of mechanical issues. So to repair, it's going to cost a lot of money and it's going to be way more than what the actual car is worth. It's probably worth less than like $2,000. So since her car been spitting out so much coolant fluid, it's just leaking all over the place. So we decided to try to find a new car. I bought used cars in the past before. I went through Craigslist, OfferUp, and I used those apps and websites before in the past to sell a bunch of my items before, like camera gear, or I actually found the camera that I'm actually recording right now through Craigslist. So dealing with other people or through private sellers is nothing new to me. So I decided to help to find her something that was reliable, going on gas, and something that just could get it from point A to point B without any type of issues and needing any major repairs. So I proceeded with the research. So I went on Craigslist and went on OfferUp. I skimmed through multiple pages of different types of cars, messaged so many type of sellers. But the thing is that by the time I messaged a bunch of sellers, they either sold the car or they didn't even respond back. Until last Friday, I found a car that was immaculate. It was a clean 2008 Toyota Prius. It had a clean title. The registration was up to date. Everything about it just seemed really good. It had 107,000 miles and he was asking for $4,900. So after looking at the Kelley Blue Book, I found the value of this car is anywhere around like $3,900 to $5,500. So he was smack dab right in the middle at $4,900. So I find that to be a pretty reasonable deal. So after finding the listing, it seems pretty good. So I decided to message the guy and I told him like, how long have you owned the car for? So he messaged back. He said that I owned it for about 8 years. I typically like to ask how long people own a car for because they know the ins and outs of the car much better and they know the maintenance with the car. So normally I would even ask for the VIN number so I could run a CarFax before I met up with the person. But since this deal just looks so good, I told myself once I get there, I'll just check the VIN and run a CarFax on the spot. So before I even met up with the guy, the past few days I've been reviewing how to inspect a used car. I went on YouTube, watched a bunch of YouTube videos. I read a bunch of articles. I even printed out a checklist of things to look out for so I don't miss a thing when I'm inspecting a car. So when it came time for the meetup, the guy, he lived about like 20 minutes away from me, so it wasn't too far to get there. And he used to live in an area that I used to live before too, like a street above from my apartment complex. He said he was driving home from school, so he'd be there in like 15-20 minutes. So I live about 20-25 minutes away. So when I got there, it wasn't an apartment complex. It was a good looking area. I parked my car there and he drove up and he parked his car. So when I met the guy, he's about like 25 or so, or maybe even younger than that. He seemed a little bit nervous. Nothing that stood out to me because, so imagine doing another transaction with another person that involves money. I can understand why you're being nervous. Even me doing transactions with other people I don't know, there are times where you get a little nervous. So right after the introduction, I went right into inspecting the car. So I looked at everything on the outside first. I looked at the paint. There was something I noticed. There was a little bit of rust towards the rear of the car, so that's when I asked the guy, I'm like, hey, there's a little bit of rust here. He's like, yeah, I used to live up in Washington State, so there was snow, so that's probably why there's a little bit of rust. So I'm like, okay, that makes sense. There was another thing that I actually noticed as well, like the rear bumper did not line up perfectly, but again, this car is from 2008. I didn't assume anything would line up perfectly. I just kind of thought like, hey, wear and tear probably wears down a little bit, Everything looked good from the outside. It looked immaculate, right? So there were some like nicks and scratches and dents and things like that, but nothing to be too concerned about because it is a car that's 12 years old. From there, I opened up the hood. I looked inside the engine. So when I was looking through the engine bay, I noticed there was some more rust there too. There was some rust in some of the parts. Not so much on the engine itself, but like the parts that held the engine to the body of the car. This car is from up north, so that's probably why this car has rust. So then I continued to ask him questions like, where did you get the car from? He's like, I got the car from El Cajon, which is a city down towards San Diego, and that's where he used to live as well. So he lives here now, meanwhile going to school and hoping to move back to Washington to finish up his schooling there. So I'm like, okay, that's fine. So I went on a test drive. The test drive was perfect. The car was driving good, but I noticed there was a little glitch in the speedometer. So there was like a little bar there that was just stuck there. He said that when they actually changed out the hybrid battery, that there was a little glitch. If there's any other problems aside from that, it's under warranty. You could always go back to the dealership and they could take care of it for you. Meanwhile, during on the test drive, we were talking to each other, getting some report. He said that his sister goes to the school here. I used to go to the same college that he went to as well. So we're just trying to get a little bit of report so I could better negotiate this car. So by the time we got back, we parked the car. I looked that over again. Then it came down to the negotiation. I told him like, hey, I noticed that there's some rust and 3 out of the 4 wheels are very clean. Just the fourth tire on the rear passenger side was worn down a little bit. I was like, okay, are you willing to go down to 4,500? And he's like, he paused for a little bit. He's like, yeah, I think so. I think that's the lowest that I can possibly go. In my head, I'm just like, all right, sweet, man. I got a pretty good deal. So before we even exchanged money and everything like that, we went through all the documents just to make sure this car is legit, right? So he handed me over the title. So meanwhile, I was looking at the title, it was sticky. And I was like, why is it like this? And he said that his little sister accidentally spilled some syrup on the title. And I was just thinking to myself, I'm like, all right, that's possible, you know? Everything on the title still looked legible, you know? It was already pre-signed. I double-checked the VIN number of the car to the title and everything matched. Another thing that I found a little bit odd when I was looking at the title was that it was from a city called Jammu. I never heard of that city before. I figured nothing of it because since the city doesn't line up, it doesn't really mean nothing to me because like I have a car that's like that. So I really didn't think much of it at that time. Everything looked good on the title. Then he also handed me a CarFax. So I looked at the CarFax, everything looked legit, you know. I said it was 2 owners. He said he was the second owner. And also all the maintenance was done in Valencia, California. That's something I kind of thought about too. I'm like, Valencia? That's kind of very west of where I live. So I'm just like, okay, it's Southern California, you know, people live at different places in Southern California. So I really didn't think much of it either. And he also gave some maintenance receipts. So he told me the hybrid battery was changed already and all the recalls were done and everything. So I took a look at it. I'm like, oh, okay, this is pretty legit, you know, it looks good. And I'm like, awesome. Because initially I was going to run a CarFax there, but since they already handed me a CarFax, I didn't even run the CarFax. So everything looked good. We shook on the deal. So I went back to my car. Got the money, got $4,500 cash. I went back to the guy. I looked at the car one more time and everything looked good. I gave him the money. He walked his separate ways. So my wife, she was sitting in a car that was parked a little bit a ways. I went back to her. I told her about the deal. Everything looks good. And then got insurance for the car before we actually drove it back home. So when we got home, everything was good. You know, I was super happy how I got such a good deal. You know, I finally explained to my mother-in-law that, hey, this is the car I got. I got it for a really good deal. Everything looks super clean, you know, for a 12-year-old car with low miles. Everything looks so legit. And she was super happy. You could just tell the joy in her face, you know. So she went downstairs and we took a look at the car. Everything still looks super good, you know. She took a little test drive and she was super happy. So I was like super proud just to have such a good deal. Later that night, I slept good. I was like, man, I did a good job today. All right, so the next morning comes around and I decided just to look around the car a little bit more, just to get more familiar with the car. While I was taking a look at the car again, I decided to look at the CarFax and the documents once again, just to make sure. I noticed something a little different. I noticed that the CarFax, the last time it was pulled was from November of 2018. I started feeling paranoid. So I went on the computer to find a free VIN check. So this is one website called vehiclehistory.com where you could plug in the VIN number and they will give you a free car history report of the car. So I plugged in the VIN number and I came to find out the car was Savage. At that moment, I was just like, fudge, you know. I wish I could say the other word, but I said that word so much, like almost every other sentence since this happened. So my heart just dropped, my stomach just curled. I'm just like, is this really happening right now, you know? But I still have my doubts. I'm just like, okay, this website is a free website. Maybe it's not legit, it's not accurate, right? I wanted to dig a little deeper. So I decided to go to this one website called VINaudit.com. They also provide CarFaxes as well. It's just almost the same thing, but it's just cheaper, right? So I was like, I know I already have the car. Let me just run this check anyways. So once I ran the check, this is what I found. So when the report came back, it showed that the car was owned in New York. So that kind of makes sense why there's rust on the body of the car and there was some rust underneath the hood. I'm like, all right, that makes sense now. I'm like, this dude never owned this car, right? I also found out that it was involved in an accident late of 2018, I think in November or so, but it was considered salvage by the insurance companies. Then I also came to find out that right after the car was salvaged, it went into auction. Then somebody from California bought the car. So I also found out this car was impounded in Mexico. So at this moment, I was super upset, I was pissed, and I was just like, is this really happening right now? For some reason, I just still had some doubts, right? So I decided to call the DMV just to confirm. So meanwhile, when I was calling the DMV, I was on wait for like about 45 minutes. Then by the time I got a hold of an agent, I told him my VIN number and license plate. He said that he cannot release any type of personal information, but he only could confirm or deny if this vehicle belonged to that person. So I told him the VIN. I told him, is this a Savage title? He's like, yes, this car is Savage retention, meaning that this car is labeled as Savage, but no one ever processed for the Savage certificate. That's the main reason why this title didn't show Savage. It looked completely clean. The guy also said that the registration was up to date. The license plate in the rear had the current year's sticker. So it was due in December of 2020. So I told the rep, I'm like, hey, is the registration current? He's like, no, it's long overdue. The last time it was registered was in 2018. So I've been driving around a car that had fake tags. Then I came to ask him, like, okay, is this the owner of the car? And he's like, yes, that's what I have on file. And I told him about the address that was on the title. He's like, yeah, that's the address that I have on title as well. At this moment, I'm just like, coming to realities, I got ripped off. I got scammed. Like, I basically got defrauded in the listing. I didn't know what to do. The only thing that I was praying for was like, I'm hoping that this is not a stolen car. If this car was stolen, not only that I overpaid for a Savage car, I would lose the $4,500 that I paid the guy, and plus the car would be taken away. So I'm basically SOL for everything. So once I found out all this stuff about this car, like the Savage title, the accident that was involved, I messaged the guy on OfferUp. Are you 100% sure that this car has never been in any type of accidents? Because the last CarFax I had was from November of 2018. No response. All right. So the next thing that I had to figure out was like, okay, all this bad stuff is happening, but not only that is affecting me, it affected my mother-in-law as well. You know, it was insane because I felt super bad already because I told her about the whole situation because she was already super happy about the car. She was already like, man, this is such a good car. You know, my son-in-law got such a good deal and everything. Then once it came turn to find out that everything was basically a lie, the car was Savage, the maintenance was not correct, and I just felt like complete crap, you know, like, of course, she felt super bad too, like, of this whole situation, but she was pretty forgiving. And she's just like, you know, this can happen to anyone. I was trying to help somebody out, but I end up making the situation much worse than it was before. It cost her money, it cost me time, and basically it was just a terrible situation to be in, you know. But since I know he lied about the title and the registration and the CarFax, I'm pretty sure that it's fake as well because it said that it was taken care of in Valencia. So I decided to double check the car maintenance. I was like, let's see if there's another thing that he lied about or not. So I decided to call him up. I was like, hey, so I got this receipt on this car. Is there any way that you can just double check to see if all of this maintenance was done? Once they ran the VIN number, they said that, do you know this car is Savage? I'm like, yeah, unfortunately I found out about it today. He also said that, yeah, this car was never seen here in this Long Beach dealership. And I'm just like, all right. So nothing is ever real, right? Then I asked him like, hey, is there actually any other maintenance that was done to this car that you know of? He's like, yeah, so the last time I see any maintenance that was done to this car was in late of 2018. That's probably right before the accident happened, and it was oil change and just routine checkup at a dealership in New York. So everything just lines up on the other documents, and definitely this guy was just straight up conning me. So at this point, I was still super upset. I was still pissed off, but I was just trying to think about like, what else can I do, you know? Maybe I should just rescam somebody else. I didn't already sign the title and everything, you know, I didn't do it in pen or anything like that. So I could probably just do it to someone else. But then I was just like, dude, that's such a stupid idea because it's just not my morals to do something this messed up to someone else. I couldn't look at somebody in the eyes and just lie like, hey, this is super good, super clean, you know? I can't do that. So the second option I could really think about is try to find the guy and take him to court. Probably take him to small claims. I was looking up his name. It was Arian Leon. That's what he told me his name was. So I looked it up on Instagram. I looked it up all of his social media accounts, you know, Facebook, anything on Google that may have found this person. Nothing showed up. Then I decided to Google the address. So when I Googled this address that was in Jamul, it's a piece of land near San Diego. And it looked like nobody ever lives, or there's even a house that's built there, you know? So it's almost kind of like a front. So I'm just like, dude, what the heck is going on here, you know? But I was still able to find out who was the owner of that land. What was this other person? They had the same last name, but a different first name, you know? But there was no house. I wasn't sure if what I could do at that point because that was not the individual that I was looking for. I don't know if that was his dad, you know, or who it was, you know. So I kind of just got tired of just trying to find this person because I'm feeling like I'm just devoting so much of my time and energy into this situation more than I did already. So the last thing I thought about was like, okay, maybe I could just go to the police and maybe file a police report. I decided to go to the police department of the city of where I did the transaction. So when I got there, they told me that there's really not much that they could do because it's not a police matter, it's a civil issue because you exchange money for a product. But I told him like, hey, yeah, but this guy basically defrauded me and he also was driving around with fake tags, you know? They're like, yeah, that's not a police issue and there's really nothing else that we can really do. You have to go to the civil courts for this. At that moment, I'm just like, all right, I thought I'd done as much as I could to try to hunt this guy down. If you guys have any suggestions or any other things that you think I could do, let me know in the comments because I'm kind of out of ideas. So I decided to message the guy once more saying like, hey, I know what you've done to me. We could work something out, you know, like in my mind, all I really wanted was like just a bigger discount because I just overpaid for the car, you know, because he basically lied about everything. So by the time I messaged him the second time, I looked at his profile. He completely changed his name. So he changed it to Mike. I'm like, was this even the actual owner of the car? You know, like I'm just thinking to myself, hopefully this car is not stolen. Seriously. I'm like, if I try to like send this guy any type of demand letter or try to get him in the courts, I wonder if this guy was even the seller, you know? I'm kind of more afraid, hoping that I would just get this car taken away as well. So since I came to the fact that it seems like there's none much that I can do, I could just get this car processed, do the salvage certificate, get all the necessary inspections. I had to go get a brake and light inspection done, go back to the DMV, get a VIN check, and just register the car as I normally would. Because looking back at this situation, I could have done this or could have done that, but there's nothing I could change about the past. Whatever happened, happened. There's this one saying that I heard once before. It was from Julius Caesar. It says that experience is the teacher of all things. And that's so much the freaking truth. Because even though this is such a crappy situation, if I could just help one other person, that'd be worth it for me, you know? Hopefully that they would never have to go through this ever. So this is exactly what I learned and what you can actually use if you decide to ever buy anything off OfferUp, Craigslist, or any other type of mobile app where you're meeting an individual in person. The first thing you can do is that never trust anyone. I'm a pretty positive person. I like to think about there's a lot of good people in this world, you know, and there's not that many criminals and crooks and stuff like that. But it seems like in this world, especially here in America, nobody can be really trusted, especially when there's a transaction with money. When I was researching of how to inspect a used car and when I was reading articles, they always explained about everybody's a freaking con artist. You can't trust anyone. Like, yeah, I took that in. You really don't know until it happens to you. You know, I wanted to believe that there's way more good people out there. So I just took it with a grain of salt. Because, like, seriously, I bought so many different things off Craigslist and this app, OfferUp, and there was really never any issues. The second thing that you can learn from this is that run your own CarFax. Probably it's best to do it before so you don't have to waste your time meeting the person, you know, because you can't trust nobody's paperwork. His CarFax looked so legit. I had the exact VIN number. Everything looked legit, but it was fake documents. Third thing that I would recommend is to check their ID. That's something I wish I would have done. I wish I checked that guy's ID with the title of the car and with the registration of the car. If he was really good con artist, you know, he would have like a matching ID, but I'm not sure if he would go through the stint of getting a fake ID as well for a one-time use, you know? That's something I wish I did. Took a picture of his ID, took a picture of his face, took a picture of the car that he was leaving the scene with, you know? Just to know that I could track somebody freaking down in case if something goes sour. So the fourth thing that I learned is that make sure that they have insurance for the car. That's one thing I did not do. I test drove the car without even knowing that this car had insurance. Because in the case of an accident or something happens, the person who's driving the car is going to be held responsible. So for me, I wish I'd done that. Like looking back on it. Meanwhile, I was checking all the documents, confirming the ID match. That's another thing I wish I looked at before. So the fifth and final thing that I wish I would have done is either met up with a mechanic or had a mechanic go out there to inspect the car. All right. But even if you're kind of like mechanically savvy, if you even ask the seller, like, hey, is it okay if we meet at a shop before I hand you over the money just to make sure everything is okay? Like they could agree or disagree, but if they don't meet up, this may shake them up a little bit. You know, they're like, oh crap, this is kind of serious, you know, and it may not ever respond to you ever again. Then you probably know that you got saved from a scam. It sucks that it's happened and I'm still pretty pissed about it. Not only that I lost some money for this car, it's like there's other opportunity costs that I lost as well. The past couple of days I really couldn't work because I was trying to handle all this paperwork. I was handling all the inspections and everything else that was included to try to get this car road worthy. And I couldn't even enjoy things that I was doing before. I couldn't make YouTube videos, you know, that's something I enjoy doing. So the past like week and a half, I really couldn't do none of that. This guy, he already defrauded me. I couldn't let him take anything more from me. All I really can do is just move forward. Like my wife, she's totally against buying anything online or meeting up with a person ever again. I can understand why, but for me, I would still do it, but just be way more careful. Go through that checklist that I told you guys earlier before, probably meet at a police station or something like that, just to be more careful next time. All I really can take away from this is an expensive experience, and I just had to learn it the hard way. I just really hope that this helps somebody out there, whether you're buying a car or anything from an individual on an app or through the internet. So stay safe out there, guys.